We're about ready. Joseph, part 6. Got Kenny joining me again today. So,
Are we live?
We're live here. Yeah. So, yeah, I've had a lot of comments. People enjoying it.
Well, good.
From many different places around the world.
Awesome.
So that's a good thing. Yeah, I'm glad when people are enjoying the Bible. So that's my aim. That's my point. If they're learning and they're blessed, and what I think is good with the Bible is when we take a look at the Scripture years later, when people come back, they'll remember. They may not remember that you're the one that helped them understand that, but they're going to remember, and that's sort of the real aim of it all, is help them think through. And so, yeah. Well, hey, good morning. Welcome once again. And we're live here, and it's Sunday morning, and we're looking at the life of Joseph once again, and my foot is stuck. There we go. Oh, that one's really high, that rung there. Where have you got yours? You're like down one.
You want this one?
Maybe I'm like too tightly wound, and it's one of those evidences, I've got my feet way up here. You don't think so? So, well, hey, good morning. Kenny's joining me again this morning, and we're going to get back into the life of Joseph.
I'm the substitute for David for a while.
Substitute for David for a while. Oh, yeah. Any one of these guys could handle this and do far better than me, but it's nice to have Kenny here. And Kenny's got a bit of a cough that he's had for a long time, some sort of tickly thing, can't figure out what it is. So he said if he starts to feel that, he may just sit very nicely.
I might just fade off the edge of the screen.
Where did he go? If you hear this coughing going on the side over here, it's Kenny. Yeah. Let's pray this morning and welcome. Yeah. Lord, thank you for this time of Bible study. We come right in out of our cars from the parking lot, grab a donut and sit down, and here we go. So Sunday morning, our minds are fresh. Our hearts are fresh. Lord, we thank you for the power of the cross, for the cleansing and forgiveness that there is in Jesus Christ, for the guarantee of life forever. We want to hold ourselves up to you as an offering and ask that you would bless us and encourage us this morning as we read these words and lead our study in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so life of Joseph. We're going to have maybe a couple more pieces of this. There's a piece at the very end of the story that we may still do. Most of the time we think of Joseph's life and then he reunites with his brothers, and we sort of drop the story there because we've centered on Joseph. So if we broaden the story a bit more, there's some really interesting parts that happen after he reunites with his brothers. Now, we're not quite there yet, and I do have a timeline, which I will show one more time for you guys, just to remember some of these years. Forgive me if this seems like it's a bit much, but I want you to try to remember. Now, I don't know if that's coming in at home. Looks like on YouTube it may not be as clear, but I'll just read it to you. The fact that Jevin, what was his name? Joseph. Jevin's another guy. Joseph, not in the Bible. He was 17 years old when he was sold as a slave. We know these from the text, so I'm not just making this up. This isn't somehow special knowledge that some Jewish mystic had or something. Right from the text. 17 years old when he was sold as a slave. 30 years old when he entered into service for Pharaoh. So that right there is about 13 years. And if we break that up, we know that some of that time he was in prison, some of that time he was in Potiphar's house. We just don't know how much is each. We talked about that before. At least 2 years of these are prison because he interpreted the dreams, and it was 2 years later that he would be out of prison. So at least 2, maybe 3 would be safe, 4 or 5 on a minimum there. So then this is the section we're at now. It's in this section of good times, 7 years, and then the 2 years of famine before he reunites with his brothers. Now, think about this for a moment, because that's Genesis 45, and we're not in Genesis 45. There are 2 stages to that reunion with his brothers, right? Right? Everybody here with me this morning? So once again, I think I'm talking to a group of folks that have read the story quite a few times. 2 stages means what? Quickly, somebody kind of... Yeah, well, his brothers come up the first time, right? And then they go back home, and they come back a second time, and that's where he reveals himself to them. So we're not at that point yet. At that point, that is 7 years in, because he tells them there's been 2 years of famine, and there are 5 more to go. So that gives us some nice, clear time markers. What dates these would be on a calendar are a very good historical question. But typically in the Bible, we don't have that because they don't place it on a Hebrew or a Syrian or Egyptian calendar. They're just telling us the time distance. So that's what we're really working with here. Now, I like this because, as I've said a gazillion times before, that would make Joseph about 39 years old when he then reveals himself to his brothers. So if you take the 17 years, the 39 years, it's about 22 years that he will be apart from his brothers. As I said before, I just like it because it's time. It makes you think of time. Boy, do you learn a lot when it takes time. I had a Master of Divinity back in 1993. I completed my degree. We already had Sophia, and Arthi found out that Nathaniel was on the way, and they were only 13 months apart. And then 15 months later, after Nathaniel was born, Lexi was born. So we were quite busy. But when Nathaniel was going to be born, Arthi said, I don't want to go back to India until he's a year old. So we had a little bit of support coming in still, and I went and found a job. And one of the guys, actually, he watches this now. He was the manager of the warehouse at the time. And so, Tom, if you're watching, a little bit of a reveal here, okay, on my own heart. It was very humbling to, you have all these degrees, and I never was like so proud that I thought I had to have this special job. But I thought God was leading me somewhere, and here I was in this warehouse working. And the guy that hired me on took very good care of me. The guys in the warehouse were great. But there were many times that I would come home from that job and I think I was there 15 months. And I would come home from the job and think, did I miss something? I studied to get this Master's of Divinity. I was in Africa. I was in India a bit and came back. And, is there something missing here? It's just, nothing wrong with the job. It was a wonderful provision, but just wasn't what I thought I was to be doing. And so, many times I can remember driving home in the evening and just thinking, wow, what is my life? Where I thought, did I miss something here? So I'm only pausing there and telling you a little bit of that story that that's the way God kind of works. He gives you a month, 6 months, a year of just chew on it. Just think about it. I'm not going to resolve this one quickly. So we get that feel with this story of Joseph. That's kind of my point there. Enough of me talking. I want to jump into the story where we left off last week, which is in verse 43 of, chapter 41. And here we're going to start to follow into the story at verse, 53. Verse 53. So the 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end. Verse 54. And the 7 years of famine began just as Joseph had said. Think about that for a moment. Pharaoh was watching over Joseph's shoulder. Can you imagine if there never came this 7 years of famine, right? Oops. So part of the truthfulness of Joseph and this divine quality that Pharaoh sees in him, I'm sure he's kind of also a little bit waiting to see this thing play out, but it does start to play out. The 7 years of famine begin. There was a famine in other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told the Egyptians, go to Joseph. Do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. I often wonder if he charged more for the non-Egyptian than for the Egyptian.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
get a membership price.
Yeah, being a citizen of Egypt, it would make some sense, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, since he took it from them to start with, he's going to sell it back to them. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I thought about that too, isn't it? Yeah, make this.
Kind of sounds like our government, right?
Yeah, we're going to take 20% of what you got, and then we'll sell you back the service that we've charged you for to begin with.
Take our Social Security all our life,
Yeah,
but when we get started, we get taxed on it when we get back. So.
Yeah, yeah. I think they do that with these big drug companies too. They give them loads of federal money, and then they charge the federal government for the drugs that they've produced or something. It's, it's good business to be in. Good business model.
Yeah, right.
So, chapter 42, when Jacob learned, remember this is not Joseph now. Now we're back into the land of Canaan. So change the camera, change the scene, heading back up into the land of Canaan. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?"
That's funny.
Were you going to say
I
something?
says, why are you staring at each
Why are
other?
you staring at each other? Yeah. So it sounds like they didn't really know what to do, did they? Because if there's a famine there, they've got all these animals, don't they? Huge, huge amounts of flocks they've got. So how do they feed all these things, all these animals? They need food, lots of it. This isn't just a little bit for them. They need it for the animals too, right? So they don't even seem to know what to do. Why do you just sit there staring at each other? Yeah. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die. Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons, first time it's using Israel in this text, and I don't really know why. So Jacob means deceiver. That was his original name. Israel was after he wrestled with God, and it means, wrestles with God and succeeds. So he's here. There's no real reason in the text why, because it's going to go back to using Jacob again. Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for there was famine in the land of Canaan also. Now, Joseph was governor in the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come here to see our land and where it's unprotected." All right. Something really jumps out to me back there in verse 6, and again down in verse 6. We're going to see it again. What happened in verse 6?
Brothers fulfilled the dream he had many years ago.
He didn't just meet them, did he? The dream was fulfilled. How?
They bowed down.
They're actually bowing down to him. You remember the dream? So I popped this open this here in chapter 37, just in case we forgot the dream. And there were two. And Joseph had a dream, verse 5 of chapter 37. And when he had told his brothers, they hated him all the more. Oh, sorry. Listen, I had a dream, he says, verse 6. Verse 7, we were binding sheaves and grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose, stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Mm-hmm. And then the next one's going to be the sun and the moon and the stars. And he's going to tell his dad. His own dad's going to say, "Hey, come on, this is crazy, these dreams of yours." But his dad's going to keep it in his mind. So I do wonder, all these years, did Jacob have a little bit of possibility in his mind that maybe Joseph wasn't dead? We're going to pick up on some of his words in a moment. So just keep that one in your mind. I wonder if he was convinced he was dead, but kind of wasn't. Kind of, there was a little space in there thinking, but he had those dreams, and these brothers are really bad, and maybe something, maybe. I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. So back to this text. Where do you come from? He asked. "From the land of Canaan." to buy food. Verse 8, Joseph recognized his brothers. They did not recognize him.
Yeah, and my verse 7 reads that he disguised himself to them. But I'm assuming they all had the Hebrew beard and all that. He probably was clean shaven, but I wonder what else he did to disguise himself.
Yeah.
I wonder how much, when they sold him into slavery, how much of a beard he had, or how much difference in looks over the
Well, beard and
years.
hair, because if he was in Pharaoh's palace, he probably was shaved.
Was he still completely shaved? Yeah.
Had everything.
Beard, eyebrows, body hair, everything. Was that still part of it?
Joseph is number 2 in the whole land. And it says he sells the grain, but he would have, it was being sold from warehouses everywhere.
Yeah.
He would have layers of bureaucrats underneath there
That's
doing
right.
that. So I think it's not in the text, but he knew, he told somebody, look out for these Hebrews coming. Because it's just not a coincidence. And you wouldn't go, it's like you wouldn't go to the vice president to
Yeah.
buy something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a very, very good point. They might have arrived at some local silo down somewhere, and he probably put the word out for them, and then they came to him. It'd be very unusual just to come straight in. So yeah, we're kind of reading between the lines a little. It doesn't really matter too much, but it's a very good point. Why would these guys, these foreigners, just come straight to this number 2 person in Egypt? You know, probably they were being watched for. And
He looked like an Egyptian.
Mhm.
With his garb and whatever he's wearing.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So he's disguising himself, and he started learning to speak this Egyptian language when he was like 17.
Well,
So
it says somewhere later that he's speaking to them through a translator.
Right.
So they think he doesn't understand their language.
right,
So, but it's interesting to me. I mean, I wonder if they ever looked at this guy and thought, "There's something familiar." I mean, I don't know. You know, you.
Yeah, I just can't put my finger.
okay, yeah. So there's and you just figure just the time factor from 17 until you're 39 years old. You know, go back and look at your pictures when you were 17, and then when you get to 39, maybe he was balding a little bit. You know, just the age progression.
Yeah.
So you've got that. You got the fact that he's not speaking Hebrew to them. He's speaking through an interpreter. So there may be a little bit of a sense where maybe like if he's here and the brothers are over there and there's somebody interpreting and he says something and they talk and back this way. So it's maybe a bit of a distance, let me say, that they're not quite so close to get a good inspection of him. Billy, what's up?
You get thinking about it, there had to be people coming from hundreds of places, hundreds of people. He wasn't the only one there selling grain.
Yeah.
He had to have a lot of help. So that had to be like divine intervention for him to be there when his brothers come. So there were people had to be coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
So there probably was a couple dozen people out there doing what he was doing.
Yeah. So it's you know, partly they might have had a lookout for him. You got to also not forget the Lord in this, that the Lord actually, you know, helped them to find him there.
Yeah, like I say, he probably wasn't out there all the time selling grain.
Yeah.
Yeah, divine intervention for him to be there.
Yeah.
He probably had a lot of people out there taking care of that.
Yeah. And it's yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, well, there may have been a special procedure for those non-Egyptians,
Mhm.
right? Because there was only a finite amount, so they would have limited what they sold to make sure they had sufficient.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm repeating a lot of this stuff just for folks at home. They usually say, hey, thanks. So yeah, just there might have been a special procedure if you're around an Egyptian. Oh, you go to those silos and then you've got to get permission from the Pharaoh himself before we can sell it. So maybe part of that was the filtering process that led them right to Joseph. Yeah. Now, I think it's interesting. I mean, we're jumping a little bit ahead in the story here and behind. We're all familiar with this, I would hope. If you're not, it's okay. We'll see as we go. But I find this really fascinating too, the thing with him not revealing himself and with the language. So this is a good one from living abroad and speaking and familiarity, at least, with some different languages. For example, my wife is from India, but she looks like she's kind of Chinese. Yeah. So a lot of times that's the people from Northeast India are more that way. Their culture is very different, but still very Indianized. It's an interesting blend. So we have sat, for example, when we went to get visas, And you can't go there as a missionary, and my occupation is a pastor. At least it was, for example, in England. So we went to the consulate. And they think she's some Chinese person or something, like she doesn't speak Hindi. And so they're blah, 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 having this whole conversation in Hindi about me and should they give me permission for this visa. And the one guy is going on about, no. And the other guy's saying, leave them alone. They're going to visit their family, right? So it's like, we're both listening to this. Arthy's catching a lot more of it than I am, but it's kind of funny when you don't let on that you speak their language. You just let them have their moment of chatting and talking, and you learn a lot. Okay, Spanish, yeah. So just let them carry on. So
A lot of people don't think I speak Spanish because my English is,
Mhm.
English, that I don't have an accent.
yeah.
So, it's funny because I've experienced that very same thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, what kind of person are you really?
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about? What are you saying?
Yeah. Let them ramble on, and they think they're doing it behind your back, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit of all this taking place here, and so Joseph doesn't. They don't recognize him. There seems to be some intention in his cover, his incognito thing here. So he says, "You're spies. You've come here to our land to see where it's unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. Verse 10. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. Your servants are honest men." Not spies, fair enough, but no, he said to them, "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the youngest sons of one man, who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Oh, pause right there, just a moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22 years, he's not seen these guys. 22 years, yeah? And now, he's starting to catch a little bit of what their story is. What did they ever tell my dad? What did they tell other people, right? Now he's starting to catch some of that. Now, I'm going to throw a question out there to you. Why didn't Joseph recognize them and say, "Oh, guys, hey, it's me, right away"? Why didn't he do that? I might think of a few reasons, but I think there's one in particular I want you to try to think about this on. Any thoughts on that? Why didn't he just reveal himself right away? It's going to be a while. He's going to play them. Why? A little revenge. Okay. What else? I think that's a surface answer. I think there's something a little more here than that. A lot more than that. What do you think?
Maybe he wants to find out a little bit more about his father and his other
That's
brother.
right. That's
Okay, a
right.
little bit of discovery. And real, no, oh dear. If we weren't in church, you'd say another word. No bluffing. No bluffing. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean, I'm trying to think of how we say it as Christians. No bluffing.
No BSing.
Thank you. Yeah. So you're going to have to, he doesn't know them. He's listening, and so he's going to discover a lot. What's up with the dad? One other thing too. What?
Maybe he's trying to figure out what their attitude is. I mean, when they actually revealed there were 12 brothers and one is no more, like he knows that in their mind they don't know they sold him to slavery. But they know they didn't kill him.
Right. They know that much of the story.
Yeah.
What are they really saying about this whole
Yeah.
thing? All right, think about this too. Here's part of what I think is that if he right away revealed himself, then that sense of family would immediately erode and break down any deep sense of fear and respect they have for him being a leader in Egypt. And he's going to play that one out for a while. So they've got the fear of God in their spine. Whoa, we've got to see that big leader. He's going to let that play out because that's critical to this story. Otherwise, immediately it's just their little brother Joseph again, and they think, oh, we can do whatever we want. So there's discovery going on. I think you might say revenge, but it's a little bit playful revenge. He's not harming anybody here. He's having a good time with them. But there's something here, I think, of his authority that he's not going to let the family side of this immediately just break it down. Sam.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on that. It could be jealousy, it could be maybe some revenge, it could be wanting to know what his father is, but in the end, knowledge is power. He has knowledge they don't have.
That's
Right.
And that always gives him the position of leverage and authority.
Yeah, so he's got knowledge they don't. Gives him the leverage over them. Yeah, Jason, were you going to add something there?
When you think about it,
His minds today, it may well be that there was a potentially quick death sentence to them, so that it was something they immediately did. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been willing to go get their youngest brother and bring him back.
Yeah. They might have broken down the whole process of getting the brother there and getting the whole family there eventually to save them, right? So he's gonna let this play out. So I'm jumping on that thing with revenge just to say it's quick to see that and think that's what it is. I think it's something much more than that. Although there's got to be a little bit of he's having some fun. Come on.
he was probably dressed as like an Egyptian, and then he probably had an accent by that time. So that's why one of the reasons they didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
The way he was dressed, and like I say, he probably had an accent by that time.
Yeah, and I know we're kind of pausing here, and these may sound like they're really overlapping. They kind of are, but just jumping on Billy's point, he's only speaking through an interpreter, and if they're hearing anything of what he's saying, he started learning this language when he was 17. Now, there's something about age, and the older you are when you learn a language, the harder it is to pick up not only on all the subtleties in a language. It's impossible really, unless you're a real native speaker. But then there's a lot of things like your mouth muscles are formed by a certain age, and so you just can't say things the way they're said in the language. My wife, they have things they say that I try, and then they all giggle at me because they're happy that I'm trying, but I'm just not saying it right. I have a friend, for example, a classic example of this. He went to Africa as a missionary, and he was a little bit, I'd say he's about 30-something when he started learning French, and then he had to learn Sango, another language. So his French is hilarious. It's hilarious. I mean, no attempt to sort of smooth it and make it sing the way French does. Just, vous voulez avoir un café? It's just, you can almost understand that. Would you like a coffee? Cafe au lait? It's hilarious. Oh, this guy was a nutcase anyway. He used to have a fake eye because he had a car accident before he became a missionary. And we'd get out the village, and you get in the village like in Chad, and kids just, nothing to do. So, kids just come flooding around, 50, 60, 80, 100 kids will gather around, just watch everything you do. So he takes advantage of that, man. Gets out of like a basin of water, washes his face a little, pops his eye out, puts it in his mouth, pretends like it's nothing, sticks it back in his eye. And man, these kids' eyes would just light up, like, whoa! Man, these white people can pull their eyes out. So anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think Joseph was doing that. So forgive me, I'm just indulging for a moment in a crazy story. But.
So one of my Russian trips, talking about language, I was trying to learn a little Russian, and the word for daughter is doshka. The word for blackboard is dosha. And being a dumb American, I didn't catch it. So my daughter Holly, I said, "This is my dosha." And this is my blackboard? What are you talking about? So it's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So I quit. I just let the interpreters do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, think about it. Somebody here in this court, the king is able to interpret into their language. So maybe that person knows Joseph's story. Maybe he's at least had some exposure to Canaanite people and to the Hebrew language. He's got to be interpreting. So anyway, maybe all this is kind of irrelevant stuff. I find it just kind of it's all the spice that makes the dinner taste well. Let's say. Okay, Joseph says, "I know you're spies. This is how I'm going to test you. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in custody for 3 days.
Good for him.
Yeah, there you go. On the third day, and like I said, just think about the sense of them needing to get a feel for the fact that he's family. They're going to find out later, but he's the Lord of Egypt. Really, they're getting a feel for this.
They had 3 days to sit there and think about it too.
Yeah.
In a prison.
Good for him.
Yes. We'll stew on that one a bit. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me so that your words may be verified and that you will not die." This they proceeded to do. So think about this. They've got a death sentence on their head if this doesn't come true. So he's really not afraid. So I don't see this so much as revenge. I think he really wants to establish with these guys that He's their brother, but primarily he's the man God's put in this position, and they need to recognize that. And so he's not afraid to let them feel the fear. He's playing a game with them too a little bit. So.
And he's mellowed a little bit, because originally it was they all stay locked up, one goes back. Now they all go back, one stays locked up.
Yeah.
So he kind of flips it.
Yeah, very true.
For I fear God, it's an unusual thing for an Egyptian to say.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I fear God.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did Egyptians say that? Yeah. And is he referencing maybe the same God that they would fear? You know, the language may not help that here because it would be written in Hebrew, so they're not going to import other words there. But okay, they said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother." 22 years have gone by, and what is it that they say? Have they forgotten that event when they sold him as a slave? No.
Still guilty.
Still feeling it. It's the first thing out of their mouth. Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come upon us. Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Remember, Reuben, being the oldest, was going to put him in a cistern, and when the brothers, I guess, went off somewhere, pull him out and send him home. But when Reuben went away, they sold him. Reuben came back and found out, oh, no. And that idea was hatched by Judah. So they did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. So this is all being said within earshot of Joseph. Think about what he's learning. The fact that 22 years later, this is the first thing out of their mouth impresses me. You think about, for 22 years, they've been carrying this. They didn't just do this lightly and forget about it. They've been carrying this. They lied to their dad. They've got lies and deception to their father. They've got the betrayal of their own brother. Deep betrayal. Bad. Boy, if you have family problems, I don't know, has anyone ever been trafficked from one of your family members? That's pretty severe, you know. Yeah.
I wonder if he knew it before Reuben, that Reuben really was trying to help him. I mean, I wonder if he could hear that when he was down in the cistern.
True. Yeah, because he wouldn't have known that,
Yeah.
perhaps. Yeah,
Perhaps.
maybe because Reuben put him down in the cistern thinking that he would do something else. And maybe for the first time he's realizing, well, I didn't realize Reuben had a different intention here. Joseph gave orders. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then came back and spoke to them again. He said, he had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. So Simeon's going to stay back. Now, there are going to be 3 times when he weeps. This is our first time. Second time is when he's going to see Benjamin. And then third time is when he's going to start just wailing so loud that everybody hears him. But, boy, that right there. Even Joseph, 22 years on, starting to hear some of these words, and he's starting to weep. He's starting to let it
The
out.
heartache is coming like that.
Yeah. It's all right there, isn't it?
Loneliness.
Yes.
Do you think there's significance in that he had Simeon taken to stay back?
I don't know. Good question. Why Simeon?
Reuben's brother?
Yeah, he's one of the four came from Leah. So you got Judah was the youngest one of those, and Reuben, yeah, he was the oldest one of them. Don't know. Yeah, it doesn't really say, but very good question. Yeah, very good question. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in the sack and give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. At the place where they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, and he saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. So they brought that to give, and now it's back in their sacks, the silver that they gave. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." And their hearts sank. And they turned to each other, trembling, and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" Now, I like the way they never exclude God from the picture, do they? They're never excluding God. They think God's punishing them now after all these years. Oh, this is starting to come back to haunt us. And now, whatever has gone on, yeah, God is involved in this. So when they came to their father, so that's a stopping point at the first night. Now they've had a few days' journey. They get to their father in the land of Canaan. They told him all that had happened. They said, "The man who is the Lord over the whole land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more. The youngest is now with our father in Canaan.' Then the man who is Lord over the land said to us, 'This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me and take food for your starving households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brothers back to you, and you can trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver." Wasn't just one of them. And when they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, "You deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back." But Jacob said, "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left." So at this point, he's kind of excluding all the others. It's just Rebecca, the wife that he loved, and these two children that came. That's where his heart lies. He lost his wife. In his mind, Joseph is gone. Now they're going to take Benjamin. I mean, this is what he's seeing. "If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow." All right. Shall we read on, or any comments?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Just a brief point. When we were talking about the structure of how, whether Joseph was there at the grain silo, when he says, "Prove this to me and I will allow you to trade in the land," that paints the picture that he's in a palace or he's somewhere else where they went to meet with him. And then once he gives permission, they get paperwork or whatever to go trade anywhere in the land and fill up their, he wasn't there filling up his sacks.
Yeah, excellent point. There are a lot of these things that as I'm studying and reading through, just refreshing some of the basics on the surface of it. That's something, I'm glad you brought that up, Ken. So the point sort of is that it says that he would give them permission to trade in the land. He's not just saying, grain, who are you? Okay, grain. So he's got great authority in the land. And it's a little bit of an insight into where this is all going. I can give you permission, not only some grain, but I can give you another thing, permission to come here and trade in this land. Come and live here and make your businesses here. So,
It's
yeah.
strange that it probably took them a couple of weeks to travel,
Mhm.
at least. The first night they find, oh, the silver's here, and nobody said, "We gotta go back right now."
Yeah.
They like, let's keep going.
Yeah. And then when they get home, yeah. So the point sort of is how the timing factor. The first night into this journey, but might have been a couple of weeks, they discover silver in one sack and they just keep going. They don't bother to go back. And
They
then,
don't go back until the grain is, until they've eaten it all up.
yeah.
Well, that's a tough conversation to have, because maybe left and we realized that we had all this silver. I mean, who do you go and tell that to? Like, oops.
And if they went back to Joseph at this point, what did Joseph tell them?
Don't come back to that, brother.
Don't come back until you've got your brother with you. Yeah. Okay, so we try to rectify the thing with the silver, or do we just go home and let's get on with it and let's bring our brother back?
And they might have thought, well, if we go back and tell him this, he's going to say, "Oh, you stole it. You're just making up this story," or
Yeah,
whatever.
where's your brother? And
Yeah.
I told you were spies. So this is a real dilemma for these guys.
Yeah.
Can't we leave just to be able don't want to turn back.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. Do you think sometimes we're too quick to not let people kind of learn their lesson when you've got the opportunity? I don't mean take revenge, but let them learn their lesson. Let something play out a little. Sometimes we're a little quick to kind of jump in and, we don't want them to think that, or why not? Let them think it. Let's see where this goes. Not to say we should be revengeful of one. I'm just saying,
No, but that they did a horrible, horrible thing.
Mm.
And, they deserve to squirm and.
They deserve to squirm.
There's
Squirm a little bit.
There's an old country song, and one of the lines goes, "I spent 3 weeks one night in the county jail."
Yeah, it's like,
A little bit of time and it seems
Yeah.
forever, but
yeah. Anyway, just sort of a thought there. You want to keep reading? We'll keep rolling. Now there was famine it was still severe in the land, so when they had eaten all their grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go back and get us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, and we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. Because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" Israel asked, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?" So I think there's a good lesson here to learn. There are oftentimes two truths. And I think as American people, one of our good qualities is we appreciate telling the truth and being what we would call straight. But sometimes being straight is also sealing your own detriment, your own bad sort of way, So I don't give away any examples of this, but think about it a little bit. When two things can be true, which one of the truths do you use? Why are you in India visiting family? Yeah. As soon as we get there, I do a lot of Bible
You
teaching.
just have to be,
Depends on who's asking the question, right? Both are true.
you really have to be selective as to
Without lying.
what of what you're gonna reveal. You have to be smart about it because.
And that's sort of what Jacob's point is. What did you go and blabber all this stuff about it just wasn't necessary, right? But he replied, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living?" He asked. "Do you have another brother?" Joseph was probing because Joseph knows them, and they don't know that he knows them, right? So they're just saying, "Look, Dad, we're not that kind of way. We keep things quiet. We're not going to tell everybody stuff." But he was probing and asking specific questions. We had to answer him. He's like, Lord of Egypt. We simply answered his questions. How were we to know that he would say, "Bring your younger brother down here with you"? Yeah, Bill.
There might be a good bit of time between the first and second visit.
Yeah.
They ate up all the grain, whether they give them a year's supply of grain or 2 years supply.
Yeah.
So
And all,
they got to really sit off.
Yeah. Yeah, so how long has it been since this part of the story picks up? Because now they're ready to go back. Simeon's been held in custody for how long?
and you
A
wonder,
year?
you wonder what Simeon's thinking.
2?
No kidding.
Wonder what Simeon's thinking. He's thinking those loud, those.
Oh, yeah. He
they're not
knows them.
coming back.
He knows them. These brothers are not good. I'll bet he figures they've given up on him. They sold his brother as a slave.
Yeah.
This is not much. Leave the other brother in prison. Save yourself. We're out of here. Bye, Simeon. So, okay, we'll go along just a second here, and then we'll pause because we're right at 10:15. Unless there's any other comments that anyone wants to make here, and it's this part of the story is quite lengthy, so we'll feel a little funny dropping it at some point today, but we'll pick it back up next week.
We knew that Reuben didn't want to sell it. I wonder if Simeon isn't he the second oldest of the bunch? So I think that's probably why he kept Simeon. He may have been the ringleader
Yeah, it says that Judah was the one Judah was the one that did it. But yeah, maybe Simeon is part of this thing too somehow. Maybe Simeon was actually the one doing the transaction, How much you give for him? That's too little. As they're trading with the Ishmaelites. How much does a human sell for? Yeah.
I think also there's a lot of nuance, because it's in third person and we know all sides of the story. We know what each one of them are thinking. They don't.
Right.
So Joseph doesn't know what the brothers are thinking. The brothers don't know. Simeon doesn't know what the brothers are going to come back to do. So we get the benefit of that. And I think that if we don't pay attention to that, we lose a lot of the story, the little nuances of what each character in the story was going through.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How long had Jacob been there? If you take Jacob's angle for a moment, what about Benjamin? What was he thinking in all of this? He loved his brother. He loved his brother Joseph. It does. It starts to really, really open it up. Were you gonna? I heard an inhale. Were you gonna?
About to cough.
Yeah.
No, Joseph, he knew how much grain he gave him. He knew the journey. He knew about how long it would take him to use it all up. And I'm wondering if he's thinking, all right, they're going to go back and immediately do what I said, or am I going to have to wait, a year and a half? I mean, and as the time went on, he's thinking, yep, they're going to wait till they run out of grain again, and
Then they're going to come back.
they're going
Finally.
to come back.
But did Joseph? On Ken's point here that we know more about the story than they knew because they were just getting their camera angle. So on that point, even like on what Ken is saying, Joseph wouldn't have known that Jacob was actually the one holding up the train here.
He wouldn't have known.
He wouldn't have known, but he knew they were having to wrestle this thing. The fact that they didn't return quickly meant that they were wrestling this one through. So something's holding up the brother coming here.
They don't know how long, the brothers don't know how long that plan was going to last. They might think, well, we might not ever have to go back again.
Yeah, sure. Maybe they're waiting for the famine to end. If it ends, then old Simeon's on his own. Sorry, guy. Sorry, Sim. We love you, brother. This is not that much. Everything's going well here again in Canaan, so see you later.
Right.
Yeah, it's only a little bit later that Joseph will reveal to them that there's 5 more years of famine, and so bring the whole family and bring them up here into Canaan and what. Hey, just as a quick question, too. We're almost at time, maybe a couple minutes left. God, the Lord. Never forget the Lord. The Lord is overseeing this. The Lord is watching this. The Lord is behind each camera angle. He's kind of working in each one's hearts. What do you think about the Lord in this? Any thought? Sorry?
He planned it. He planned it all. The Lord God did.
So the Lord has planned this. Yeah. And why didn't the Lord plan for them to get to Egypt in a different way? Why didn't he just if he wanted to use Joseph, just let him get educated and go to a good university and then get a good position? And Joseph turned to all his family's brothers and said, come family, come. God has promoted me to this. The way God's planning it. So the way that he's planning it, perfect is timing. What else? Not just the way, but what else in that planning sense? Picking up on Kay's words there on God's sort of involvement.
Seems to me he's teaching a very important lesson about betrayal and redemption and that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah. So there's some good lesson going on here. And let me just, because we're out of time, let me just pause with that thought and finish this. This is kind of where I'm aiming at here. Time is important. Some people say time is the best healer. That's total nonsense. 2 people can go through the same circumstances and have the same amount of time, and one can turn out bitter and horrible, and one can turn out changed. So time doesn't really mean anything on its own, but time is such a critical piece. And God using this we see character development here. Mm-hmm. I think. We do in Joseph some. I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm seeing some. I mean, at the end of the story, are the older brothers changed at all? Maybe we don't see character development, but the Lord is at least forcing them through these troubles to come to terms with. Joseph has been through his hard time now. He's given them a little bit of trouble for some bigger purposes. The Lord involved with all this. Any quick thought there? Ken, you're kind of nodding your head.
No, I was just saying, we don't learn quickly. I mean, it took Joseph going through all of this to get to the point where he didn't handle that in another way. He didn't say, told you, now who's his best brother now?
Yeah.
That's who he was before he went through all this. He was arrogant. He thought he was the best. He needed all these trials to have grace to deal with this, to teach them the lesson that they need.
Yeah, and so maybe as a good concluding point onto your thing, again, just repeating for folks at home, that that the time on its own is not a good healer. I don't agree with that expression at all. But with the Lord in this thing, there is no short circuit. There's no shortcut to change. You know, any of us that are starting to get some more age on us realize that you don't change quickly. You know, I used to think I was a very selfless, patient individual until God gave us 3 children.
Mhm.
And they are wonderful. So I'm not making cynical comments about my kids. They're wonderful. I realized, wow, was I selfish? You start to realize they need you and you serve them. But that's an awakening, and that's a long-term awakening. You know, you think, okay, Lord, I've learned now that I'm very humble and patient. I'm patient, Lord.
I think
No more lessons on patience.
that's really a New Testament principle too, because like in the elders' qualification, one of the things is not a new convert. It takes time to grow and experience and learn perseverance and all these things, all these qualities. I tell you, it's not microwave Christianity. It's a slow cook pot.
Yeah. So we can know for certain we're going to heaven in an instant.
That's
we can
right.
learn a lot of truth, but the character change, takes time.
And a great example of that's John Mark. Bailed out on the first journey, and Paul said, and then later on he matures and ends up writing one of the Gospels.
Yeah. Paul said he's worthwhile.
There's hope for all of us.
There is, yes, there is hope. Oh, wow. Well, hey, let me pray for us. We are a little beyond our time. Thanks for your patience. Hope you're enjoying this story. Lord, we thank you for the Bible. And none of us are doing anything more than just opening this book and picking apart a really beautiful story. I thank you that you include all the warts and problems and troubles. You don't exclude things to make it look pretty, because it helps us. Because we have troubles, we have problems, we need change. And we can see that you're a God who will develop and will change. It does take time. We see that you're a God that's got purposes and meaning in all things. So we thank you. Bless us as we open our Bibles and study a little more in this next hour. In Jesus' name, amen. Here's your microphone. All right.